Something rare happens when a guest walks into a hostile room and refuses to shrink even an inch. Before we dive into the video, please like, subscribe, and comment. Now, let's get back to the video. What happens when America's most beloved icon steps straight into a place that thrives on confrontation and decides she will not be intimidated for a single second? This moment became one of the most talked about clashes in daytime television history because it wasn't loud at first. It was calm, controlled, and devastating in a way no one saw coming. When Dolly Parton brought her warmth and charm into the studio of The View, she didn't expect to be treated like a target, but that's exactly what happened when Joy Behar decided to sharpen her tongue instead of her questions. This wasn't just an interview. It turned into a public test of respect, boundaries, and what happens when someone finally refuses to tolerate being talked down to? The studio buzzed with its pre-show noise as Dolly settled comfortably into the guest chair, her sequined jacket catching the lights and shimmering with confidence. She had been on countless talk shows across decades, faced every kind of interviewer imaginable, and handled criticism with grace her entire career. Still, something felt off that day. There was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before, a quiet edge that hinted this wouldn't be another friendly conversation. Across from her sat Joy Behar, leaning forward with a particular glint in her eye, the kind that usually signaled trouble for whoever landed in her sights. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't quite match her expression, the kind that felt more like a challenge than a welcome. And without much delay, Joy went straight for the jugular. "So, Dolly," Joy began, tilting her head slightly, "you've been making music for what? 50 years now. Don't you think it might be time to update the look?" She gestured casually, almost dismissively. "The big hair, the sequins, it all feels very 1970s. The room seemed to pause for a split second, waiting for Dolly's reaction. Dolly's smile never faded, but her eyes sharpened just enough to show she had clocked the intention behind the remark. "Well, honey," she replied calmly, "I've always believed that if something works, why fix it? My fans seem to love me just the way I am." Her tone stayed warm, but the confidence was unmistakable. Joy wasn't satisfied. She leaned forward even more, doubling down with that confrontational posture she was known for. "But don't you think," she pressed, "that you're setting a bad example for young women? All this focus on appearance, the surgeries, the costumes, it's not exactly feminist, is it?" The mood in the studio shifted instantly. The other hosts grew visibly uncomfortable. Whoopi Goldberg shot Joy a warning look, silently urging her to change course. Sarah Haynes tried to step in with a lighter question to ease the tension, but Joy cut her off without hesitation. She was locked in now. "I'm serious, Dolly," Joy continued, her voice firm and unapologetic. "You've built your entire brand on looking like a cartoon character. Isn't that shallow for someone who claims to be a serious artist?" Dolly's fingers tapped her knee once, a subtle movement, but one that those close to her would recognize immediately. It was the sign she was choosing her words carefully instead of reacting emotionally. "Joy, darling," Dolly said evenly, "I've never claimed to be anything other than exactly what I am. I write my own songs, I run my own businesses, and I've employed thousands of people over the years. If that's not serious enough for you, I reckon that says more about you than it does about me." A low murmur of approval rippled through the audience, but Joy wasn't ready to let it go. "Oh, please, Dolly," she scoffed. "You can't seriously claim your success isn't built on playing into male fantasies. You're basically a Barbie doll with a guitar." "Joy," Whoopi interjected sharply, "I think we should move on to—" "No, it's all right, Whoopi," Dolly said gently, though there was steel starting to creep into her voice. "I think Joy has something she needs to get off her chest. Go ahead, honey. Tell me what you really think about me." Joy practically lit up at the invitation. Fine, she snapped. I think you're a smart woman who spent her whole career dumbing herself down to appeal to men. I think that cutesy, helpless Southern Belle act is an insult to women who fought for real equality. And I think it's about time someone finally called you out on it. The studio went completely silent. Even the camera operators froze. Dolly sat perfectly still, her smile still in place. But something fundamental had shifted in her posture, something unmistakable. "Well," Dolly said softly, "that's certainly an opinion you're entitled to have, Joy. But let me ask you something." She paused, just long enough for the weight of the moment to sink in. "How many literacy programs have you started? How many children have you put through college? How many hospitals have you helped fund?" For the first time, Joy hesitated. Her expression flickered with uncertainty. "That's not the point I was making." "Oh, but it is exactly the point," Dolly continued, her voice growing stronger with every word. "While you've been sitting behind this desk, tearing other women down, I've been out there building women up. My imagination library has given away over 100 million books to children who might never have owned one otherwise. I've created thousands of jobs, most of them for women. I've mentored young female artists who needed someone to believe in them." The audience was completely captivated now. "But none of that seems to matter to you," Dolly added calmly, "because you don't like my hair." Joy opened her mouth to respond, sensing she was losing control of the moment. But Dolly raised one perfectly manicured hand. "I'm not finished, sweetheart," she said firmly. And the energy in the room shifted again, because everyone could feel it. This conversation was no longer going the way Joy had planned at all. The room felt frozen as Dolly held her hand in the air, her voice calm but unmovable. "You want to talk about feminism?" she continued, her tone steady and deliberate. "Real feminism is women supporting other women, not tearing them down because they make different choices." The audience leaned forward as one. "Real feminism is judging women by their actions, not their appearance." Her words landed with precision. "And real feminism is having the courage to be exactly who you are, even when bitter, judgmental people try to shame you for it." Joy's face flushed a deep red, her usual confidence cracking right in front of the cameras. "I am not bitter," she snapped, but the sharpness in her voice sounded forced now. "Aren't you?" Dolly asked quietly, tilting her head just enough to make the question sting. "Because from where I'm sitting, you seem awfully angry at a woman you've never met for choices that don't affect you in any way. That sounds pretty bitter to me." The other hosts watched the exchange like spectators at a high-stakes tennis match, their heads turning back and forth as the tension thickened. The audience barely breathed. Sensing the moment slipping away, Joy tried to regain control. "Look, Dolly, I'm not attacking you personally," she said, though her voice lacked conviction now. "I'm just saying, your image sends the wrong message." "No, Joy," Dolly cut in, her voice firm and unmistakably sharp now. "You are attacking me personally." Her words were measured, but there was no softness left. "You've called me a cartoon character. You've compared me to a doll. You've accused me of setting a bad example for women because I choose to wear sequins and tease my hair." She paused, letting the silence do the work. "Tell me, what message does that send to young women watching you right now?" Joy's mouth opened, then closed again, her response evaporating under the weight of the moment. The audience sat in stunned silence, the air buzzing with anticipation. I was just trying to have a discussion," Joy stammered weakly. "A discussion?" Dolly repeated, genuine surprise lifting her eyebrows. "Honey, discussions involve mutual respect. What you've been doing is an attack." She leaned back slightly, still composed. "I understand how you might confuse the two, since attacking seems to come very naturally to you." Whoopi tried once more to step in. "Ladies, maybe we should take a break." "No!" Joy snapped sharply, her pride wounded and exposed. "Dolly, you can act sweet all you want, but the fact remains, your career is built on outdated stereotypes." Her voice grew harsher. "You giggle, you bat your eyelashes, you pretend you don't know anything when everyone knows you're smart. That's not empowering, it's manipulative. A collective gasp swept through the audience. The venom in Joy's voice was unmistakable now. Dolly, however, simply smiled and nodded slowly, unfazed. "You're absolutely right about one thing, Joy," she said calmly. "I am intelligent." She spoke clearly, confidently, intelligent enough to build a business empire from nothing, intelligent enough to write songs that have touched millions, intelligent enough to know that how I choose to present myself doesn't reduce my worth or my accomplishments. She paused again, eyes locked on Joy. "But I must admit, I'm not intelligent enough to understand why you think it's your place to judge how other women live their lives." Joy's face grew redder by the second, her composure slipping further. "Someone needs to call out this fake persona you've created," she snapped. "You're not really this sweet, innocent country girl. It's all an act." "And what if it is?" Dolly fired back instantly, her voice controlled but burning now. "What if I've chosen to present myself in a way that makes people feel good?" She leaned forward just slightly. "What if I believe kindness and warmth are better than cynicism and cruelty?" Her eyes never left Joy. "What exactly is wrong with that?" "It's dishonest," Joy spat. "It's not authentic." Dolly laughed then, a real laugh, bright and disarming, like sunlight breaking through a storm. "Authentic?" she said warmly. "Let me tell you about authentic." Her voice carried through the studio. Authentic is growing up dirt poor in the mountains of Tennessee and working every single day to build a better life. The audience listened intently. Authentic is making choices about how I look and how I present myself, because those choices opened doors for me. She smiled gently. Authentic is being honest about who I am, a country girl who loves music and loves people. Her tone shifted slightly, sharper now. What's not authentic is sitting behind a desk, throwing stones at other women because their choices make you uncomfortable. The other hosts looked increasingly uneasy. Sarah appeared like she wanted to disappear under the table. Sunny stared down at her notes, clearly avoiding eye contact. But Joy wasn't backing off. "You can dress it up however you want," she said, "but you're still selling an image that tells women they need to look a certain way to succeed." "No," Dolly said firmly, her voice cutting through the noise. "That's what you're doing." The audience stirred. "You're telling women that if they embrace femininity, if they wear makeup, dress beautifully and style their hair, they're somehow less than." She shook her head. "You're saying women have to look and act like men to be taken seriously." Her voice hardened. "That's not feminism, that's just another prison." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience as Joy sensed her grip slipping completely. "That's not what I'm saying," Joy protested, but her words felt hollow now. "Isn't it?" Dolly pressed calmly. "Because, from what I've heard, you seem to believe any woman who embraces traditional femininity is betraying the cause." She leaned back, composed and unshaken. "Tell me, Joy, what gives you the right to decide how other women should present themselves?" Joy tried to respond, but Dolly wasn't finished yet. "And while we're talking about authenticity," she continued, her voice steady, "let's talk about what's really happening here." The studio went silent again. "You invited me here to promote my music and my charity work." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "But from the moment I sat down, you've attacked my appearance, my choices, and my character." She paused. "Is that what you call professional journalism?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Joy shifted uncomfortably in her chair, clearly realizing she had pushed this too far. Joy shifted in her chair, her confidence clearly rattled now, and muttered that she was just trying to ask tough questions. The words sounded thin, even to her own ears. "Tough questions?" Dolly repeated, disbelief clear in her tone. "Now, Joy, a tough question would be asking about rural education, or how to keep small communities alive, or how women can build sustainable businesses in this industry. She leaned forward slightly, never raising her voice. Tough questions are about substance, about things that actually matter. The studio felt frozen again. Attacking a woman's appearance and calling her a cartoon character isn't journalism, it's bullying. You could hear a pin drop. Even the crew seemed afraid to move, worried they might miss a single second of what was unfolding. Joy swallowed hard, then tried again to regain control. "Look, Dolly, I think you're misunderstanding my intentions," she said, but the authority she once had was gone. "No," Dolly cut her off smoothly, without hesitation. "I understand your intentions perfectly." Her words were calm, but each one landed hard. "Your intention was to embarrass me on national television." She didn't blink. "Your intention was to make me look foolish so you could feel superior." A ripple ran through the audience. "Your intention was to use your platform to tear down another woman because she made different choices than you." She paused, just long enough to let it sting. "The problem is, it's not working out. The way you planned." Joy's face turned a deep, unmistakable shade of red, her hands trembling against the table. The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances, finally realizing this situation had completely spiraled beyond repair. But Dolly wasn't backing off now. If anything, she looked more focused than ever. "You know what the real tragedy is here, Joy," Dolly continued, her voice soft but cutting. "You had the chance to have a meaningful conversation with someone who's spent 50 years in this business." The audience listened in complete silence. "You could have asked me about songwriting, about surviving this industry as a woman, about philanthropy, about building something that lasts." She shook her head slowly. "Instead, you chose to tear me down because you don't like my hair and my clothes." Her eyes locked on Joy. "What does that say about you as a journalist? And what does that say about you as a woman?" Joy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She glanced around the table, searching for backup. But no one met her eyes. Even Whoopi, usually quick to step in, stayed quiet this time. The silence grew uncomfortable, heavy. Finally, Joy croaked that maybe they should agree to disagree and move on. Dolly tilted her head, studying her like she was deciding whether to let that slide. "Oh, we're going to move on," she said calmly. "But first, I think you owe your viewers an explanation." The audience stirred again. "Because this isn't really about me, is it, Joy?" Dolly continued. "This is about you, and whatever issue you seem to have with women who don't make the same choices you do." "That's ridiculous," Joy snapped, though her voice shook. "Is it?" Dolly asked gently. "Because I've been thinking about all the successful women who've sat at this table over the years." She paused thoughtfully. "And I'm noticing a pattern." The tension spiked. "You seem to have a particular problem with women who embrace their femininity, women who choose glamour, who enjoy being traditionally feminine." Dolly leaned back slightly. "Why do you think that is?" The question hit hard. Joy's face drained of colour for a brief second. "I don't have a problem with—" she started. "Yes, you do," Dolly interrupted calmly. "And that's the sad part." Her voice softened, but the truth in it was sharp. "There's room in this world for all kinds of women." She gestured gently. "There's room for women who wear sequins and women who wear suits." The audience nodded along. "There's room for women who love glamour and women who don't." Dolly's eyes never left Joy. "But apparently, in your world, there's only room for women who make the same choices you do." The studio was completely silent now, but the energy was electric. Everyone knew they were watching something rare. A bully being dismantled without shouting, without insults, without losing control. Joy tried one last desperate move. "You're twisting my words," she protested. "I never said any of that." Dolly smiled again, warm on the surface, unyielding underneath. "Honey, I don't need to twist your words," she replied. "Your words speak for themselves." She ticked them off calmly. "You called me a cartoon character." The audience shifted. "You said I was setting a bad example." Another pause. "You accused me of being fake and dishonest." She leaned forward just slightly. "Those are your words, Joy." Own them." The silence stretched painfully long. Joy looked around again, but her co-hosts stared at their notes or the table, avoiding her completely. She was alone now, and everyone could see it. "I think," Joy said suddenly, standing up and yanking off her microphone, "that I've had enough of this conversation." "Sit down, Joy," Whoopi said firmly, but Joy ignored her. "No," Joy snapped, moving toward the edge of the set. "I won't sit here and be lectured by someone who thinks being a living doll is an achievement." Her composure was completely gone now. Dolly remained calm, watching her with something close to pity. "And there it is," she said quietly. "The real Joy Behar." The audience gasped. Not the journalist, not the champion of women's rights, just a woman who can't stand to see another woman succeed on her own terms. That was the breaking point. Joy spun around, her face twisted with rage. "I don't have to listen to this from some washed-up country singer who thinks she's profound because she can rhyme moon with June." The gasp from the audience was loud and unmistakable. Even the crew looked shocked, but Dolly just smiled gently and shook her head. "And there you go again, Joy," she said calmly. "When you can't win on merit, you go straight to personal attacks." Joy stood there trembling, searching, desperately for a comeback that never came. The silence dragged on until it became unbearable. Finally, she muttered that she was done and accused the show of ambushing her. Dolly raised her eyebrows in genuine surprise. "An ambush?" she asked softly. "Joy, you're the one with the microphone and the platform." Her tone stayed polite. "You invited me here." She paused. "If anyone was ambushed, it wasn't you." Joy ripped off her earpiece and stormed off the set as the cameras followed her briefly before cutting back to the table. The remaining hosts looked stunned, like they'd just witnessed a live crash they couldn't stop. Whoopi cleared her throat, trying to regain control. "Well, that was unexpected," she said carefully. "Dolly, I want to apologize." "No need to apologize," Dolly replied graciously, smoothing her skirt and adjusting her jacket as if nothing unusual had happened. "Sometimes people show you exactly who they are." She smiled calmly, "and all you can do is accept it and move on." She glanced around the table. "Now, didn't you want to ask me about my new album?" The audience erupted into applause, finally releasing the tension that had built for nearly the entire segment. Dolly waved and smiled as if the whole thing had been a mild disagreement instead of a televised implosion. But here's the part no one talks about out loud. The moment didn't just expose Joy. It exposed the show itself. It raised uncomfortable questions about how often strong interviews cross the line into public humiliation. It forced viewers to ask whether outrage had quietly replaced journalism. And most unsettling of all, it made people wonder how many guests before Dolly had been treated the same way, but didn't have the confidence, history, or composure to fight back. Because in the end, Dolly didn't just walk off that set with her dignity intact, she left behind a mirror. And not everyone watching liked what it reflected.